contract modifications. So what is the concept of a contract modification? Again, contract modification, I'll take one example to explain all the three scenarios. Okay. Now, the concept of contract modification is that let's say I entered into one contract and on 1st of January 2015. Okay. That contract was for implementation of a customer relationship management software. Okay. Now, over the period of time, let's say 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, I modified the contract. When I say modification, a modification can either be in the scope of the contract or it can be in the pricing of the contract. If either of the things changes, it's a contract modification. Okay, either the scope can change or the pricing can change. If either of the things changes, it's a contract modification. Okay. Now, they have made this guidance surrounding contract modification slightly complicated, because earlier what used to happen under the old regime, if a contract modification would have happened, I would have just taken the impact on a prospective basis. But now they have slightly complicated it, and I'll take an example to explain this. You will, I mean, if at all we understand this concept, we will appreciate that it's a very logical concept. Yeah. So let me take an example and explain this. What is this? I'll take an example. Let's say 1st of January 15, I entered into one contract, customer relationship management implementation. The value of the contract was $10 million. Okay. And at that point of time, the understanding between the buyer and the seller was that the implementation of this customer relationship module is going to take 2 years. Okay. Now, tell me one thing. Typically, I mean, this implementation, I follow a revenue recognition model known as a percentage of completion revenue model. That is the model which I follow to recognize revenue. Now, I am saying, let's say till 30th of September, it continued. Okay, the same contract continued. So, till 30th of September, it continued. I will take a simple example. $10 million. Let's say that the cost to complete this was $6 million. Okay. On 30th of September, what happened? That let's say I'm closing my books for quarterly reporting or whatever. So on 30th of September, I will compute the POC. For computing the percentage of completion, I will determine the actual cost which I incurred till this date. Let's say I incurred $3 million of actual cost. If I incurred $3 million of actual cost, what is my percentage of completion? 50%. 3 divided by 6, 50%. Which means I recorded revenue of $5 million. Okay, till this point of time, everything okay, only one contract is continuing. On 30th of September, I modified the terms of the contract. Okay, I modified the terms of the contract, and the way I modified the terms of the contract is, I said that apart from the customer relationship management software, there is one more module known as the, let's say, inventory module. Inventory module. This also I will implement. Okay. This inventory module I am going to implement for $5 million. And this will take me another 2 years. Okay. Both the scope and the price of the total contract changed. This is a contract modification. Okay. Now what will happen? Let's come step by step. Is the contract modification approved? Yes, the contract modification is approved. The first point of evaluation, what I see after, first thing which I will check is whether the contract modification is approved. The contract modification should be approved by both the parties, the buyer and the seller. Let's assume that the contract modification is approved. After the contract modification is approved, I will see that whether the additional goods or service are distinct from the goods or service which I was transferring originally. Okay. So, second thing which I am going to check is the additional good or service which I am delivering, whether it is distinct from the good or service which I was delivering originally. Yeah, we will see this concept of distinct, but just to make life easier right now, a good or service is distinct if the customer can buy that good or service from somebody else also. Okay, if the customer can buy the good or service from somebody else, then the good or service is distinct. So let's assume that this good or service is distinct. Implementation of the inventory module is very much different from implementation of the customer relationship module, and I say that the additional good or service which is this is distinct. Then I will say then I will see that the price which I am charging for this additional good or service of $5 million, whether it reflects the standalone selling price of the inventory module implementation or not. So had I not entered this contract at all of customer relationship management, if I would have entered into the contract of only inventory module implementation, had the price would have been $5 million or not. That is what I am going to see. That is the concept of a standalone pricing or fair value. Whether this inventory pricing, which I am taking additionally, is at fair value or not. If both the conditions are fulfilled, it's a separate contract. Okay? If both the conditions are fulfilled, which means the added scope of the contract and the price of the added scope is fair valued. If both the conditions are fulfilled, it's a separate contract. Okay? If it's a separate contract, our life is very easy, because then what is happening is the original CRM software will continue as it is, the revenue recognition, and this inventory module implementation is going to start now. No complication at all. Okay? In this case, it's a separate contract. Now let's come to another scenario. Another scenario is if yes. Okay, account as part of. Okay. Now I'll take another scenario, another hypothetical example. Another hypothetical example is I made it the evaluation whether the added scope is distinct or not. Okay? And when I made that evaluation of distinct, that evaluation failed. I concluded that implementation of the inventory module is not a distinct performance obligation. Okay? And I can conclude that. Because maybe it would have happened that I would have seen how the customer relationship management software is getting implemented, and currently I'm in one set of vendor is only having access to the entire Oracle, and it would have been very difficult for the customer to go and appoint another vendor for implementation of this inventory module. All those conditions I would have seen, and I would have concluded that no, it would have been impossible for the buyer to appoint any other vendor to do this inventory module implementation apart from the original seller. In this case, I concluded that inventory module implementation is not distinct. Okay? Then what will happen? If it is not distinct, then I was following POC earlier. Okay? Now instead of this $10 million of POC, I will do a cumulative POC. Okay? I will do a cumulative POC. The way a cumulative POC will happen here is, on 30th-9 the modification happened. Okay? On 30th-9, my total consideration is going to become 10 plus 5, $15 million. Okay, let's say that the total contract cost to complete this is $2 million. Okay, and this is very important. Just be with me for 5 more minutes. So when it is not distinct, it means it has become one contract. Okay, when it has become one contract, then what is going to happen? My total contract consideration is become 10 plus 5, 15. What is my total contract cost to complete? 6 plus 2, 8. 8 million. What is the actual cost which I have incurred till date on this contract? 3 million, because this is just going to start. Maybe I have not entered a single pie on this. 3 million. Now you take out the POC. Now you take out the POC. 3 divided by 8. What is this? What will come? 37%. Apply 37% on 15 million. Okay? Whatever is the answer, that is the revenue. So if the added scope is not distinct, then you are going to do this adjustment. This is typically known as a cumulative catch-up adjustment. Sorry? 3 divided by 8 is the percentage of completion now. Okay, this comes to 37%. 37% into 15 is going to be your revenue recognition.
But 5 million, so as on 30th September, we have already accounted for.
No. That was under the first scenario. So I have taken two different assumptions.
5 plus 5, 10. On that we can go now further.
No. So I'll come to that also. But I have taken two different assumptions. My first assumption was whatever added scope and price you delivered under the contract was distinct. Okay? It was distinct, which means it became a separate contract. Which means you accounted for $5 million, well and fine. Now you take it as a separate contract and apply a separate POC. That was the first example. In second example, I said that inventory module implementation is not distinct. Okay? The product only or the added scope is not distinct, which means now it has become one contract. When it has become one contract, I will apply one POC on the entire contract. And when I apply one POC on the entire contract, a cumulative catch-up adjustment happens, which is this way. You take total price as the contract price, and on that you apply total POC. Now the third scenario, okay, third unique scenario. The third unique scenario is that the added scope is distinct, but the price of the added scope is not fair value. Okay, the added scope is distinct, means inventory module implementation is distinct, but the price which I am charging to the customer is much less than what I would have charged to any other customer. It is not at fair value. In this case, a cumulative catch-up adjustment will not happen. Okay, please note. When this is the scenario, a cumulative catch-up adjustment is not going to happen. Nothing will be touched. $5 million will be recognized. Okay. Now, in this case, what is going to happen? In this case, what is going to happen is, on 30th of September, I will see that what is my remaining performance obligation now. Okay. This is a slightly complicated case, the last one. In the last one, on 30th of September, I will see that what is my remaining performance obligation. My remaining performance obligation is to deliver 50% of the customer relationship management software. Correct? 50% of CRM software I have to deliver. What is the value remaining for this? 5 million. Okay. What is the cost I am going to incur to complete this? 6 minus 3, 3 million. Correct? And my remaining performance obligation is inventory module implementation. Inventory module implementation, 100%. Inventory. The value is 5 million. Okay, the cost is 2 million. Now your total remaining contract price has become 10 million, whose cost to complete is 5 million. And you apply POC on this. Okay, don't touch what has already been recognized. Now you account for it on a prospective basis, if only the price is not at fair value. Okay, so three scenarios can be there in the case of contract modification, and it can become complicated at times. It will be applicable typically to those companies which generally follow this contract accounting model, POC model, and stuff like this. Long-term service arrangements are there. It will typically apply. Three scenarios can be there. Either your added scope and price can be fair value, in which case it will become a separate contract altogether. Either your added scope is not a distinct performance obligation, in which case you will do a cumulative catch-up adjustment, or your added scope is a distinct performance obligation, but the price is not fair value, in which case you will do a prospective accounting. Three different scenarios can be there in the case of contract modification, which we need to be careful about.
If I am having suppose I am a software supplier, I have 5 standard products. Individually, if somebody is asking, I will charge say 1 lakh rupees individually. But if some customer who is having all 5 from me, then putting together value it will be 5 lakhs. But I am putting a discount because
that is common. We'll come to that. That is common. That is not a contract modification. That is not something which you agreed something.
Then there your fair valuation will not play properly because.
So we'll come to that fair valuation. Exactly this scenario I will address. Okay, I'll come to that.
Excuse me.
Yes.
This is as of 30th September.
Sorry.
We are talking of a scenario of 30th September. I am required to close my books by October, declare the results for September, right? Fair value scenario happens on 5th of November.
5th of November, okay.
Then what would be the scenario?
Then
For booking-
again a cumulative adjustment will happen on 5th of November. Your previous results you are not going to touch. You are not going to touch the books of accounts of 30th September or 30th June.
Right.
A cumulative catch-up adjustment will come on 5th of November itself. It will always come on the date of modification.
Okay.
Right? In this case, I assume 30th September, so it came on 30th September. But if you have done the modification on 5th of November, a cumulative catch-up adjustment can come on that day only. Okay? Now, see this example. I have explained you all the three scenarios, so you can just read the answers which is given as part of it. No. It can assume any scenario. So first of all, everyone read this? Okay. So tell me, what is the contract modification here? Widening of the road, and for that contract modification, widening of the road, you have an added price of 200 rupees. Okay. So you will have to see that whether it's a distinct performance obligation or not, at a fair value or not, in which case it will become a separate performance obligation. Okay. We'll see this. Now see this. If it becomes a separate performance obligation and at standalone selling price, that 200 will be a separate contract. Otherwise, the 200 is going to get recorded on a prospective basis. Okay. Now identifying the performance obligation. So now we are done with step 1, which is identifying the contract. As part of identifying the contract, we studied that what is the contract? A contract is something which creates an enforceable rights and obligation between the buyer and the seller, which is legally enforceable. And then as part of the contract, we studied what is combining contract and what is a contract modification. Now we'll come to step 2, identifying the performance obligation. Now, identifying the performance obligation, or they have given an example here. So here we need to identify the performance obligation under the contract. If I am supplying the software along with implementation, or I'm supplying software along with TCS, then what are the different performance obligation under the contract? A performance obligation is a promise to transfer a distinct good or service to the customer. Okay? A distinct good or service to the customer which you are delivering under the contract is a performance obligation. Performance obligation has to be identified based on the contractual terms and the customary business practices. Okay? Based on the contractual terms means under the terms of the contract you have negotiated that you are going to deliver software plus implementation, software and implementation, which are two performance obligations. But if your customary business practice is such that whereby you never provide implementation unless somebody takes the software also from you, then it is as good as a one performance obligation. So you need to see both the contractual terms and the customary business practices when you determine the performance obligation. Okay. Now, two important concepts. Incidental obligations or marketing incentives can very well be a different performance obligation. A marketing incentive is something like a discount voucher. Okay. So let's say that a retail company gives you a discount voucher, whereby they said that if you come and purchase products worth 1 lakh rupees from me, I will give you a discount voucher of 5,000 rupees, which you can redeem at any point up till 6 months down the line. That discount voucher is a separate performance obligation. Okay, it's a distinct good or service which has been provided by the retail company to the customer. It's a separate performance obligation, right? So incidental obligation or marketing incentives are distinct, can be distinct performance obligation. Second very important concept is any activity which you do to fulfill an obligation is never a separate performance obligation. So I'll give you an example, and I was lucky enough to learn an example on this. A few days back, I was sitting with the CFO of a company, and he said that when we talk about performance obligation, anything can be a performance obligation, which means that let's say that my job is to supply goods to a customer. Okay, he was in the business of supplying these toolbars to the customer. Okay, steel toolbars. So he said that I am in the business of supplying steel toolbars to the customer, whereby what I do is that I supply steel toolbars to the premises of the customer, and my performance obligation is to do the delivery of the steel toolbar, which means that supplying of a steel toolbar is one performance obligation, and transportation of the steel toolbar is second performance obligation. So can I record revenue differently? Can I record revenue of the steel toolbar when the goods left my premises, and can I record revenue of the transportation part when actually the goods reach the premises of the customer? Yeah, and we tried convincing him that no, it cannot happen, and he said that I will enter into two different contracts. I will enter into one contract with the customer where I will say that I will supply the steel toolbar, and in the second contract I will say that I will only do the transportation from you. Then can it become a separate performance obligation? It cannot become a separate performance obligation, because this is an activity which is done by an entity to fulfill the performance obligation. Yeah, your performance obligation is to supply the steel toolbars only. Transportation is an activity which you do to fulfill that performance obligation. So that can never be a performance obligation separate. It is never a distinct good or service. So where you are really confused, or where you are really thinking that whether anything is a distinct performance obligation or not, you first go and check that whether it is something which you are doing to fulfill a performance obligation, or whether it's a distinct good or service which is going to add any value to the customer. It will never be. It will never be. First of all, insurance can never become a performance obligation. Okay, by way of insurance, what you are trying to do, you are just trying to insure yourself that while in transit, if something happens to the good, you are secured. It's not a performance obligation or a service which you are providing to the customer. Right? You can get, but no value is getting added to the customer. It's again a performance obligation. It's a performance obligation which is merely fulfillment of the main performance obligation. It is never a distinct good or service.
Can be a contract where my prices are exactly. I just sell you on the date of my factory. Beyond that, if you are asking something.
If your contract terms are ex factory, you can recognize revenue when the good leaves the premises. It will always depend on the contractual terms. Okay. Now, you asked a very valid question. Now, with this question, I mean, everyone would be thinking that what is actually a distinct performance obligation? I mean, what are those criteria which will give you an answer that whether a performance obligation is a distinct performance obligation or not? Okay. So, these are the criteria. There are two important criteria which is needed to be fulfilled for a performance obligation to be distinct or not. The first criteria is whether the good or service is capable of being distinct, and whether the second criteria is whether the good or service is distinct in the context of the contract. Okay. So, first criteria, whether the good or service is capable of being distinct. The first criteria means that whether the good or service has got any standalone value to the customer. Okay, that is the concept of the first criteria, capable of being distinct. Whether the good or service has got any standalone value to the customer means that whether the customer can benefit out of the same on its own. Yeah. So again, taking an example of, let's take an example of server plus implementation. So server plus implementation, whether these are two performance obligations, to check that I will have to see that whether the customer can benefit of the server on its own, whether the customer can benefit out of the implementation on its own. Yeah. If the customer can benefit out of both of these activities, then it will become distinct. Then the criteria 1 will be fulfilled. Second most important thing you also see in standalone value is, can somebody else come and do that part of service for you? Which means that implementation. Now, how it has got the capability of being distinct is that, let's say that the customer can take the software only from you, but implementation he can go and take from anyone else in the market. Which means implementation has got a standalone value. It is adding some value to the customer. It has got the capability of being distinct. Criteria 1 will be fulfilled. Okay, that is what capability of being distinct means. Now I come to the second criteria. The second criteria is whether the good or service is distinct in the context of the contract. Okay, distinct in the context of the contract is very important. Here I apply the customary business practice of the entity. Okay, I will apply the customary business practice and I will see that I am talking about whether I should separate the hardware from the PCS or hardware from the implementation. But whether it's always the case whether the entity supplies both of these things together, whether it is a customary business practice of the entity to supply hardware along with implementation, and it's the case that if the customer doesn't take hardware, then the entity will not supply implementation also, or whether the entity can supply implementation service also on a standalone basis to the customer. Here the customary business practice of the entity is going to be relevant in the second, in step 2, capability of being distinct. Okay, or if the service which I am providing is highly interrelated or highly dependent on the first element which I am providing, then also it is not distinct in the context of the contract. So just keep in mind, the second criteria is very much in line with the customary business practice of the entity. You need to see the customary business practice whether they sell these two things separately or not. With this, we'll come to an example. See this example and you tell me that what are the different performance obligations which should be accounted separately. Apply step 1, apply step 2 and then give me the answer. So what I will do is I will go step by step. First, I have 3 elements here. What are the 3 elements? Supply of the software plus implementation plus maintenance. Let's apply step 1 first. We'll come to step 2 later. Customary business practice will come to later. But let's apply step 1 first. By applying step 1, what are the different performance obligations? Capable of being distinct, standalone value. Standalone value means can he benefit on a standalone basis or can somebody else also provide the same service? So capable of being distinct, if I apply that criteria, then all the 3 will become 3 different performance obligations, right? Because software is there. For integration also they say that the integration can be performed by other vendors. Okay, and for maintenance, so maintenance the vendor only sells separately. So maintenance is no question at all. So all the 3 elements can become separate performance obligation if I apply step 1. Now apply step 2. Customary business practice. Dependency of one on the other.
So it cannot be operated without installation.
And that is one very important factor. And second one, that the customary business practice is to sell these 2 things together, which is important.
Even if in some cases he might not be selling it together, but in some cases he might get.
So if that is the case, if that.
But it will not operate without the installation. That is the one of the main part.
No. Customary business practice is the most important part. Okay, if somebody else can come and do the implementation, and if he would have concluded that I also do implementation on a standalone basis, it's my separate service. I very commonly do only implementation for customers, okay, without supplying the software. Then it would have become a separate performance obligation. That's where I say that you disregard everything. Customary business practice is very important here. Yeah. So because of the customary business practice, equipment and installation will become one performance obligation and maintenance service will become second performance obligation. Okay? Check this. This is the answer. This is the way to. This is how we have applied step 1 and step 2 to the exam.